They distracted you on purpose. While you scrolled, while you laughed, while you argued about nothing, a decision was made, not announced, not debated. A silent move that will reshape America, and almost no one is talking about it. Think about that for a moment. The headlines told you to look left, while the real story was unfolding to the right. The news fed you outrage over trivial drama, while something that will define your future quietly slipped through the cracks. And here's the truth. By the time most people realize it, it'll already be too. This isn't a theory. It isn't speculation. It's happening right now. And whether you're young or old, rich or struggling, the ripple effect is coming for you. Because this isn't just about politics. It's not just about economics. It's about control. Control of what you earn. Control of what you own. You own. Control of what you own. Control of how much freedom you really have in the years ahead. Ask yourself, why weren't you told? Why was this buried under noise, gossip, and distractions? The answer is simple. If you knew the full truth, you might resist. And resistance is exactly what they fear. Ooh. But here's the part that should keep you up tonight. The shift has already begun. It's not a storm waiting on the horizon. It's already raining. And the system you thought would protect you is built on sand. Most Americans still believe tomorrow will look like yesterday. They cling to the illusion of stability. But illusions don't last forever, and when they finally shatter, the crash will be louder than anything you've ever seen in your lifetime. That's why you need to hear this now. Because what just happened is not some random policy change. It's a domino. And once the first piece falls, the rest will follow, faster than anyone is prepared for. But here's the real question. Why don't people see it? Why are millions still living as if nothing has changed? The answer is simple. Because for decades, we've been conditioned to believe in stability. Jobs, the economy, politics, even safety nets, sold to us as permanent. But in truth, it was always an illusion. For decades, we've been told a comforting story, a story that everything is stable, that the system will hold, that jobs will always exist, money will always flow, safety nets will always catch us when we fall. We've been conditioned generation after generation to believe that stability is the default setting of America. But here's the unsettling truth. Stability was never real. It was a carefully managed illusion. Think about it. You work, you pay taxes, you save for retirement. You trust that banks will protect your money, that politicians will keep the economy afloat, that laws will remain consistent. You trust because you were taught to trust. Because the alternative, the idea that it could all collapse, feels unbearable. But look closer. Every stable system has cracks. The economy, built on debt, speculation, and printing money from thin air. Healthcare. One major accident, and the average family is buried under bills they'll never escape. Politics, a revolving door of promises that are broken before the ink even dries. Yet the illusion remains intact because people don't want to question it. They cling to it. Stability gives comfort. It allows you to sleep at night believing tomorrow will look like today. And this is where the psychological trick comes in. If enough people believe in stability, then on the surface, the system holds. Because nobody rocks the boat. Nobody rocks the boat. Nobody pulls the curtain back. But the cracks, they've been spreading for years. You've seen it, even if you didn't want to admit it. The cost of living rising faster than paychecks. The feeling that every election is less about hope and more about damage control. From the quiet anxiety that maybe, just maybe, the future won't be better for your children. And now, what just happened has ripped those cracks wide open. The illusion is faltering. And the dangerous part. And eventually, the people. So if you're wondering why you didn't hear about this on the evening news, why it wasn't trending on every feed, why your favorite commentators brushed past it. There's a reason. They don't want you paying attention yet. They don't want panic, or questions, or resistance. But mark my words, what just happened will not stay invisible for long. You will feel it in your wallet, in your freedoms, in the way you live your daily life. And that's when the illusion truly shatters. Because what comes next is not a return to normal. It's the beginning of something far more dangerous. Here's where the shift becomes personal. Because what just happened isn't some abstract policy or distant global maneuver. It's already working its way into your life. You might not see it yet, but soon you will feel it. And the first place it shows up, your wallet. Think about the last time you went grocery shopping. Did you notice how the same bag of food costs more than it did a year ago, even though the packages look the same? Did you notice how gas prices swing like a yo-yo, always with a new excuse attached? Or how rent and housing costs rise faster than wages, forcing more families into debt just to stay afloat? That isn't random inflation. That isn't just the economy doing what it does. That's the fallout of decisions being made quietly at the top, decisions that devalue your dollar while protecting the assets of the few. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Americans are being squeezed from every angle. Jobs that once felt secure are no longer safe. Automation, outsourcing, and cost-cutting measures are leaving entire industries unstable. The promise that a steady job would guarantee a steady life, gone. Families are working harder than ever, and yet falling further behind. Savings accounts, the nest eggs people built with decades of sacrifice, are quietly being eroded. You can save the same amount, but the purchasing power shrinks year after year. What could buy you a comfortable future yesterday will barely cover survival tomorrow. And debt. It's the new chain. Credit cards, student loans, mortgages, these were sold as tools of opportunity. But in reality, they've become cages. Every percentage point in rising interest rates means millions more in payments extracted from ordinary people. The silent storm is already here. But most Americans don't notice because the system is designed to distract them. Sports, celebrity drama, endless social media cycles, they're the noise meant to drown out the quiet sound of the foundation cracking. While the nation argues about cultural battles and meaningless scandals, the economic machine keeps tightening its grip. And here's the cruel irony. The pain doesn't come all at once. It comes in small doses. A grocery bill that's $20 higher than last month. A utility bill that suddenly jumps frames. A medical expense that wipes out half your savings. Each moment feels survivable on its own. But put them together, and you realize an entire middle class is being drained dry, slowly, deliberately, without alarm bells. This is how collapse works. Not with an explosion, but with a suffocation. And if you think your government safety nets will protect you, think again. Social Security, Medicare, pensions. These were built in a different era, under the illusion of stability. But as the cracks widen, those nets will fray. Promises made decades ago are being rewritten in fine print, while future generations are left holding the bag. All the while, the wealthy, those closest to the centers of power, shielded. They know how to move money, how to exploit loopholes, how to profit from instability. While the average American clings to hope that things will bounce back, the elite are already preparing for a different reality. This is the fallout of what just happened, the silent storm. It doesn't care about your political party, your background, or your beliefs. It will touch everyone. Some will notice early, prepare, and adapt. Others will cling to the illusion until the wave crashes directly over them. And the most chilling part, This isn't even the full extent of the consequences. The economic strain is just the beginning, because what follows is a social unraveling that could change the very fabric of American life. If the economic fallout is the storm, then psychological control is the fog, because even as people struggle, most don't connect the dots. They don't ask why. They don't demand answers. Instead, they keep going, heads down, hoping tomorrow looks better. Why? Because they've been conditioned not to see. Fear, distraction, and narrative. This is the hidden playbook. It's how populations are steered, and it's not new. History shows us that whenever empires faced cracks, leaders didn't simply admit failure. No, they crafted stories. They created enemies. They spread fear. They told people exactly what to believe and punished those who questioned it. In Rome, bread and circuses kept the masses pacified while corruption hollowed out the empire. In Germany, fear and propaganda rewired an entire population to accept horrors they would have once rejected. In the Soviet Union, narratives were so tightly controlled that truth itself became dangerous. And today, the methods are more sophisticated, but the effect is the same. Look around. Every time instability threatens to surface, a new distraction conveniently dominates the news cycle. A scandal, a viral trend, a celebrity, controversy. It doesn't matter how trivial it is, as long as it keeps you looking the other way. At the same time, fear is carefully cultivated. Fear of foreign threats, fear of economic collapse, fear of disease, fear of each other. Because a population that lives in fear doesn't question authority, they cling to it. Fear makes people beg for control, even if that control chains them further. And then comes the narrative, the polished speeches, the expert panels, the slogans repeated until they feel like truth. We're protecting you. We're building back stronger. This is for your safety. The words change, but the psychology remains. Because if you repeat a story often enough, it becomes reality for the masses. Here's the unsettling part. Most people believe they're immune to manipulation. They laugh at propaganda from other countries. They mock past generations for being brainwashed. But they don't see the subtle engineering happening right now, in real time, shaping what they fear, what they desire, even what they think they know. And when you live inside a carefully crafted story, the cracks in reality don't matter. You dismiss them. You rationalize them. You say things like, "That's just how the world works," or "Things will balance out eventually." This is the hidden playbook. Not chains, not cages, just stories. Stories powerful enough to keep millions blind to their own decline. But here's the psychological trick that makes it most effective. Division. If people are divided, they cannot unite against the true source of their suffering. So the narrative fuels anger between neighbors, between political sides, between generations. While you fight each other, the architects of the system move forward, unchallenged. It's control without bars, obedience without force. And the scariest part, most people never even realize it's happening. But there's another layer here, a deeper, almost philosophical one. When populations are manipulated through fear and distraction, something profound is stolen. Their ability to imagine a different future. People stop dreaming, stop questioning, stop resisting. They shrink into survival mode, accepting less and less each year until their silence becomes the final seal of control. And if you think this can't happen in America, remember, every empire believed the same. Every population thought they were immune, until history proved otherwise. So while the storm brews in the economy, the fog of control keeps people calm, entertained, and distracted. But fog doesn't last forever. And when it lifts, the reality it reveals is something far more dangerous than most can even comprehend. If the economy is a storm, and the fog is psychological control, then geopolitics is the silent hand that steers the weather. Because this event we uncovered, it doesn't exist in isolation. It's one move on a global chessboard, and powerful players several moves ahead are already responding. Most people see nation-states as distant actors, flags on a map, speeches on TV. But behind those speeches are deals, alignments, and bargains that rewrite who holds influence, who controls resources, and who gets to set the rules of trade. Imagine a game where the main currency of power shifts. Shifts. When trade partners begin to negotiate outside the old systems, when new payment mechanisms take root, the very leverage that kept one nation dominant begins to slip. It's not loud. It doesn't make headlines. But it changes everything. Look at the players. You have established powers trying to preserve their advantages. You have rising powers building alternatives. You have financial elites who move money like water, flowing towards safety and influence. And then there are corporations, tech platforms, and shadow networks that quietly blur the lines between private gain and public policy. Each of these actors benefits when the public is distracted, because realignment is messy. It requires consent, or at least complacency. So while the average citizen argues about politics on social feeds, these networks are negotiating the future behind closed doors. Resource access, supply chain rewrites, tech standards. These are the things that will determine which countries thrive and which ones scramble. And here's the real danger for you and me. When global alignments change, local consequences follow fast. Factories reroute, supply chains reroute, energy deals change. Suddenly, industries that supported whole towns become unprofitable. Jobs disappear not because of laziness, but because the map of demand has shifted to a different hemisphere. Then there's influence, soft and hard. Influence means cultural sway, technological dominance, and the ability to set norms. If a nation can set the standard for how tech is built, how data flows, how commerce is regulated, it gains disproportionate power. That power is used to secure advantage, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Contracts favor certain vendors. Regulations lean one way. Markets tilt. Markets tilt. Now layer on the financial elites. They don't pick sides out of patriotism. They pick sides based on stability, profit, and access. When a new corridor of trade opens, money moves. When a currency's role changes, capital follows. That movement can accelerate the destabilization you already feel: capital flight, tighter credit, asset repricing. It makes the economic storm fiercer. And don't forget covert influence. Intelligence, cyber operations, legal backchannels. These are the non-public tools used to ensure favorable outcomes. A piece of infrastructure built by one nation can carry more than electricity or data. It can carry leverage. Control the infrastructure, and you control the levers of influence. Why does all this matter to you? Because geopolitics isn't abstract. It determines whether the food on your table arrives on time. It shapes the price of heating your home next winter. It decides whether a factory in your town gets a contract or loses it to a competitor overseas. It decides whether your retirement is tied to a currency that holds value or to one that slowly erodes. And while Americans argue about slogans, masks, or celebrity scandals, the deeper arrangement is being rewritten. Allies are quietly repositioning. Trade relationships are secretly negotiated. Power is shifting in ways that will make the next decade feel unfamiliar. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's strategy. It's the unavoidable reality of nations and markets reacting to advantage. But what makes it dangerous is how few people notice until the effects are undeniable. So the question isn't whether change is happening. A change is inevitable. The question is whether you'll understand the direction of that change before it reaches your doorstep. Will you be pulled along, surprised and unprepared? Or will you see the pattern and choose differently? Because once international pieces move in harmony, the domestic fallout becomes inevitable. Borders don't have to be crossed for consequences to arrive. The rearranged chessboard will hit home in ways that feel personal, and that's when denial stops being an option. And that leads us to something even more delicate. A fracture not just in systems, but in society itself. What follows next is where the geopolitical and the personal intersect and trust begins to break. Now we arrive at the part most people never hear. The part that turns fear into awareness, and awareness into power. Because up until now, we've walked through illusions, events, economic fallout, psychological control, and geopolitical realignments. Each piece paints a darker picture than the last. And if you've stayed with me this far, maybe you're asking, so what does this really mean for me? For my family, for the future I thought I could count on. Here it is, the truth that shocks most people when they finally see it. This was never random. It's not a coincidence. It's a trajectory. Every event we've unpacked, the silent policies, the economic strain, the manipulation of narratives, the shifting global chessboard, they're not isolated storms. They're connected currents in a larger tide that is reshaping America's future. The system that promised you stability is dissolving. The world order that gave America unmatched influence is shifting, and the freedoms you assumed were permanent are being slowly rewritten in fine print. That sounds terrifying, and it should. Because fear is often the first step to clarity. But here's the empowering part. Fear doesn't have to paralyze you. It can wake you up. The truth is, most people will never see this coming. They'll keep scrolling, keep hoping, keep trusting that a normal will return. They'll ignore the cracks until the collapse becomes undeniable. And by then it will be too late to adapt. But you, right now, you have a choice. You can either fall asleep in the illusion, or you can wake up, sharpen your awareness, and prepare for what's coming. And preparation doesn't always mean stockpiling supplies or retreating into fear. Preparation begins here, in the mind. First, mental preparation. You must accept that stability is no longer guaranteed. The sooner you release the illusion, the stronger you'll be when change accelerates. That shift in mindset is everything. It takes you from being a passive victim of events to someone who sees patterns and adapts early. Second, emotional preparation. Learn to master your attention. Fear and distraction are the tools of control. If you can control what you focus on, if you can step outside the noise of headlines and narratives, you regain power. Don't let yourself be herded by fear. Use fear as a signal, a compass pointing to where you should look deeper. Third, practical preparation. Diversify your life. Your income, your skills, your dependencies. Don't anchor your survival to one job, one system, one fragile chain. Build flexibility, build resilience. Small steps now, learning a new trade, saving differently, building networks of trust, become lifelines when the storm intensifies. And perhaps most important of all, community. No one endures upheaval alone. Every period of collapse and renewal in history was survived by those who built alliances, who leaned on each other, who shared resources and knowledge. Isolation breeds weakness. Connection breeds strength. So what this really means for you is this. The trajectory is real, the fallout inevitable, but you are not powerless. The illusion only controls those who never question it. The narrative only owns those who never see beyond it. The shocking revelation is not just that America's future is being rewritten. It's that, in the middle of that rewriting, you still have agency. You can resist fear. You can adapt before others do. You can see the fog for what it is and walk through it with clarity. With clarity. And when enough people awaken, when enough people refuse to play the role of distracted spectators, history itself can shift. That's the deeper secret hidden behind all of this. The architects of control fear one thing more than collapse itself: an aware, united population that refuses to be steered. So don't let this just be another video you watch and forget. Let it be a spark, a wake-up call, a reason to step back, reflect, and decide how you'll live differently from this moment forward. Because the storm is here, the fog is thick, and the chessboard is being rearranged in silence. Oh. But the final revelation is this: even in the darkest uncertainty, awareness is power, and those who see clearly today will shape what rises tomorrow. History has a cruel rhythm. Nations don't collapse all at once. They drift slowly into silence. Citizens fall asleep at the wheel, lulled by comfort, distracted by noise, convinced that tomorrow will look just like yesterday. And by the time they realize the ground beneath them has shifted, it's too late. That's the danger of this moment. Not just the policies, not just the economic strain, not just the manipulation. It's the sleep, the forgetting, the willingness of millions to trade awareness for distraction. And yet, you are here, listening, which means you've already stepped outside that fog. You've already glimpsed what most people refuse to see. That is no small thing. That's a choice. Because right now, you stand at a crossroads. One path is the path most will take. Keep scrolling, keep hoping, keep pretending the storm isn't real. It's the easier path, but it comes with the highest price. When the storm finally breaks, they'll be caught unprepared, powerless, and afraid. The other path is harder, but it's the only one with hope. It is the path of awareness. The path of refusing to be lulled back into sleep when the world needs you awake. Here's the haunting truth. The storm is coming whether you believe it or not. The question is, will you see it first? Will you prepare before the crowd even realizes the sky has darkened? That choice is yours. And if you're still here, listening to these words, maybe deep down you've already made it. You don't want illusions. You don't want comfort at the cost of clarity. You want truth even when it's unsettling. That hunger for truth is rare, and it's powerful. So let this be more than just a video you watch and move on from. Let it be the spark that pushes you to dig deeper, to prepare smarter, to connect with others who refuse to stay blind. Because awareness alone is strength, but shared awareness, that's unstoppable. If these words resonate with you, don't keep them to yourself. Share this message, leave a comment, subscribe, and join a community of people who see the storm for what it is and who refuse to face it alone. The storm is real. The fog is thick, but those who awaken first stand a chance. And maybe, just maybe, they will be the ones to shape what rises on the other side.